Now, I'm going to end with a story about how I wrote my first book. My first book is not Up, Influence, Power, and the You Perspective. It's not the book I wrote with my daughter, which is A Woman's Guide to Successful Negotiating. It was a book basically on how to negotiate compensation from my human resources days. A book called Get More Money on Your Next Job in Any Economy. Now, at the time, I was the Vice President of Employee and Labor Relations at Macy's. Macy's had just been taken over. I decided, rather than take the job in Cincinnati with Federated Department Stores, which is where they were headquartered, I was going to take my severance and go become a consultant. So after I did that, all my friends started calling. They either wanted me to help them negotiate their deal with Federated Department Store or help them negotiate their deals with some other company. And I thought to myself, the problem with working for your friends is, frankly, they don't want to pay you, and you really can't start a consulting business, as I said, on pizza and beer. So I thought, I know, I'll go to Barnes & Noble. Yes, this was the days we still went to Barnes & Noble rather than to Amazon. And I'll go look and find a book on negotiating compensation. I will tell my friends, read the book. If you have any questions, you can call me. These being my friends, knowing they would never read anything, they would never call me. I could go about building my consulting business. The only problem was, when I got to Barnes & Noble, I didn't find any good books on that subject. I did find good books for, if you happened to be a CEO, there were a lot of good books on how to negotiate compensation. But for your average mid-level manager, there weren't a lot of good books on that topic. So I thought, well, no good books on this. I've been doing this for a lot of years. I know how to do this. I'll write a book. Okay, and then I thought to myself, what do I have to do to write a book? So I wrote a table of contents, because you have to figure out what's in the book. And then I wrote the first chapter because I figured, who's going to pay me to write a book if they don't know I can write something? So I wrote the chapter, and then I decided, well, that's enough work unless somebody's going to pay me to do this. So I went out, I shopped the book to 6 publishers. 2 of them actually liked the book, liked the proposal, made me an offer. I signed a book deal with McGraw Hill, who has since become my publisher, and we were off to the races. Only problem was I now had to write the book. And so I thought, how am I going to do this? Let me get some advice. So I had a friend who had, I know, just written a book. So I met with my friend, and I said to him, hey, I've just signed this book deal with McGraw Hill. And he said, oh, that's great. They're my publisher too, and you love working with them. And then he says to me, well, how long did it take you to write your book? Well, I said, I haven't written the book yet. That's what I'm here to talk to you about. And he looked at me like I was crazy. And so I said to him, of course, how long did it take you to write your book? He said, it took me 7 years to write my book, and then another year to find a publisher. And then he went on to tell me something I have since learned to be true. You don't get a book deal if you're a first-time author and you've never written anything without actually writing the book, because no one's giving you an advance and paying you to write a book if they don't know you can deliver a product that people are going to buy. So why do I share this story? Why is this of any interest to any of you, unless you're writing a book? The reason it should be of interest, it underlines one of the key principles that I use when I teach influencing and negotiating. And that is that we tend to do what we've always done. The reason I was able to negotiate that book deal was not that I was so brilliant and such a great negotiator. No, the only reason I was able to negotiate that book deal is I was too stupid to know it wasn't done that way. Because had I known that, or had I spoken to Fred first, I probably wouldn't have even attempted it. So instead, believing I had a good idea, being confident in a good idea, believing that of course they would want me to write this book and pay me a lot of money to do it, I went in with that attitude. I connected with their you perspective, what they cared about. I was able to convince them that this was a great idea and there was a real market for it, and because all my friends needed it. Of course, everybody needed this. I was passionate. I connected with what they cared about. I got them to want to do this book deal. And once they wanted to do it, it was actually very easy to negotiate what, in hindsight, now that I've done several book deals, was a very good book deal for a first-time author. As I said, this illustrates the key to being successful, not only in influencing, but in life. We tend to do what we've always done. We tend to limit ourselves by what we think we can do. There are no limits when you influence, when you negotiate, or in your life, except those you place on yourself.